Hey everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be a fun, chit-chatty, relaxed video. We're going to be talking about my bookshelves and the books that are on there. How many books do I own? How many unread books do I own? Percentage. There's going to be a lot of stats. This is for my stats people. Depending on the genre, which genre is the worst one, percentage-wise, read versus unread. This is going to be just over-analyzing and overthinking this whole situation. It's because next year I'm planning on doing a yearly challenge where I will be reading my physical TBR. So this is why we're over-analyzing things. I turned around all my read books on my bookshelves. I'll insert clips showing you like before after I turned them around. There's a few that I realized just after filming that I forgot to turn around, but it gives you overall a good idea of the books that I have read. And yeah, this is going to be fun. So first off, there are 3 things that influence the amount of books that I own in the amount versus read versus unread. So first one is I use my library a lot and I recommend you do that. I feel like it's something that we have to remind people on Booktube. I feel like you don't need to buy every book you're going to read. Every year, about 50% of the books that I read are from my libraries. I say libraries because I have 2. I have one that I don't have to pay anything. There's one I pay a fee, a yearly fee to have access to a library to a bigger city not too far from me. I never go in person. I only use my phone. Recommend the app Libby if you can get it and connect to your library card. I know it's not available everywhere, but if you can, do it. I have, like I said, 2 libraries, so I can have 30 books on my waiting list at all time, which is great because some books there's like 6+ months that you have to wait to read them, but some of them are always available. So like highly recommend using your library. I do it a lot. Second thing that influences the amount of books that I have on my shelf are the fact that I buy most of them used. Makes a huge difference budget-wise. I use library sales very often because they are $1 per book. It used to be 4 for 1. Inflation. That's inflation for you, but still super affordable. Otherwise, I like using thrift stores like Value Village, any other indie bookstores not too far from me. It's a little bit more expensive than library sales, but it's still a lot more affordable than brand new books. I live in Canada. Books are really expensive in Canada, but once in a while I will still get some, usually from Indigo, pre-order the ones I'm really looking forward to. If you have their card, you get 10% off. So like there's ways to, you know, go for the sales and everything to make it a little bit more affordable, but that's kind of how I've accumulated all of my books. And lastly, I unhaul every year. So usually in June, I do a video where I get rid of all the books that I have read 99% of the time and that I either didn't like or I'm not planning on rereading, and then I donate them to libraries so they can resell them, or at little libraries not too far from me if I think that someone would be happy to see it there. So yes, all of these things influence the amount of books that I have. So I went ahead and I counted and recounted them multiple times so I would know for sure. And I actually even counted them in French. You know it's serious and you want to be exact whenever you're reading your first language. So I own on my shelves, I'll go back to that in a second, 796 books. I say on my shelf because I have a feeling if I were to go through my whole house, I would probably find 4 more books. So if I say out loud that I own 800 books, that's why, because I probably do, but for the exact percentages that I will use, I will count 796. Don't worry. So yes, am I surprised by that number? Absolutely not. I knew I owned a ton of books, and I believe the exact number you need to be considered a library is 1,000. So give me 3 years. Give me 3 years. That's pretty crazy, but I don't feel overwhelmed with it because, for anyone that doesn't know, I went from owning 4 Bailey bookshelves with extension in my living room. This was my living room before, and I just turned my master bedroom into a library. So I now own 7 Bailey bookshelves without extension. It makes a difference. It's a whole shelf less, but my ceilings are apparently shorter upstairs than downstairs. It is what it is. And the middle ones, I can put books on both sides. So it's like I have 9 bookshelves. It's crazy, but it means that I now have a bunch of space. I have some shelves that are completely empty, so I have room for growth. So it doesn't feel as overwhelming as it felt with 4 because some of them had to be like double staffed because layered. Anyway, I had too many books for the amount of shelves that I had. So now it feels great. It feels great. It doesn't feel overwhelming. I do think some genres I need to declutter. We'll come to that in a second. So that's the amount of books that I own, 796, about 800. Now, the important question, how many of them are unread? Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you 3 questions Leave your prediction in the comment section. I'm curious what people are going to say. You can guess how many books, like percentage-wise, how many books do you think I have read versus unread? Let me know that. Let me know which genre do you think I own the most physical books. And lastly, let me know which genre do you think I have the worst percentage of read versus unread. Because I kind of mentioned a little bit my predictions before, but I would love to hear what you guys think. So, okay. The first answer to that was, how many books do I have that I have read, like percentage-wise? So 796. Actually, I just finished one. I don't think I counted it, but it won't make much of a difference. 262 read versus 534 unread. Again, there's one more that I can put in the read section, but it means 33%, which, you know what, is about exactly what I thought it was going to be. Because again, of all the things that I've mentioned, I get rid of the books that I've read if I didn't like them. And I just started doing the opposite, getting the ones I gave 5 stars to from the library. So I'm slowly accumulating those because I want my bookshelves to represent my taste. Because now we know 2/3 of the books on my shelf I haven't read. So when I'm showing you what's on there, I don't even know if they're good. I hope so. But if you see them, you might think this is my taste, but we don't know. We don't know yet. So yeah, 1/3. I'm actually really not surprised, but I am not mad about it, to be honest. I don't want my physical TBR to ever be 0. I think that would be really sad. I like having books on my shelves that I'm looking forward to. I see them as like future joys, so it doesn't stress me out. Obviously, everyone is very different about this, but yes, I never want it to be 0, so I'm okay with this. Is it a lot? Yes, but YouTube is kind of a job for me, so like I'm essentially doing that so I can put books on my taxes. That's it. I'm curious how many books I have read in general. Give me a second. Ooh, good thing I just finished a book. So I calculated from my Goodreads reading challenges. So like it's not 100% the exact number because there's so many books I started, didn't finish, and never put on that list. And there are a few that I started but didn't finish and put on that list because they usually were part of challenges. I had read 50%. So like the exact number, I would have to go ahead and like rewatch every single wrap up that I've done in the last 6 years. So that's not going to happen. But this is the amount of books I have about read in the last 6 years on Booktube. 667. That's why I said, good thing I just finished one. A little close. So yeah, that's a lot of books. So see, I don't feel so bad owning this many books if I can read this many books. You know, currently as I'm filming this, I have read 31 books. I just literally saw it, but anyway. So like, this is what I mean by I don't feel too overwhelmed with the amount of books that I have that are unread. So that's a lot of books. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. I don't know if you guys remember, I had done a video where I said I've read 400 books on Booktube. Here are like the best ones per genre, like one per genre. I need to do an updated version of that when I hit 750, making it very, very clickbaity. But I mean, it's going to be fun to choose one. Like, is it the same answer after reading, 350 other books? So we have that to look forward to for next year. But yes, that's a lot of books. Oh my gosh. Now let's go through my bookshelves per genre. I'm going to show you read versus unread on screen. And we're going to talk about, yes, the percentages, but also if I'm happy with that number and if I need to do some decluttering or not, because that's important. It will influence next year with my challenges. So we're going to start with fantasy. We're going to do left to right. So fantasy are the 2 bookshelves behind me. It used to be my main read genre in general. And I thought it was going to be my most own genre because it fills, well, not completely, but fills 2 bookshelves. But fantasy books are just big. They're chunky. So I think that's why. And I mean, I'll come back to that. Okay. I'm blabbing. I own 215 fantasy books. Physical books. That's, again, a lot, but not surprising. Like I said, usually is my main genre. This year is like the exception. I just have been reading other things. It happens. But yes, 215. It's my second most owned genre. And I have read 69 of them as I'm recording this, so that's 30%. I'm not, did I say 30? 32%. I'm not super surprised, and This, in my opinion, is the genre I need to do the most cleanup or like decluttering, because at the bottom there are 2 or 3 shelves that I know I need to go through and decide what I'm doing with them. Last year, or actually this year during the summer, I did my first edition of Read It or Unhaul It, which, wink wink, is going to be my challenge all year next year. That scared the crap out of me. I mean, I'm going to do the challenges, but it's going to be one that I do throughout the whole year. And I desperately need to do it again with a bunch of the YA fantasy that I have in the bottom shelves, because I bought them years ago when I started watching Booktube, like 2016. I kept seeing these books everywhere. I'm sure you feel the same. And I accumulated these books. And some of them I went through. I loved them at the time. Some of them I got rid of. And I have a lot of them left, and I haven't read them in like 5+ years, so it needs to happen. So basically the Read It or Unhaul It challenge is that I read the first chapter and I decide, do I finish the book or do I not? Because I cannot get rid of books without trying them. It hurts. I want to at least try them. And sometimes I'm surprised. That's what happened last summer. One of them ended up really enjoying it, and then some of them I ended up getting rid of them after like 2 pages. So maybe if I have time, actually, at the end of this month, I have a couple books that I need to finish, but maybe like between Christmas and the holidays, maybe between like Christmas and New Year's Eve, I'll do like a vlog that I'll post early in January, starting the year on the right foot, and like going through a couple of those on these shelves, because it needs to happen. At this point, I feel bad buying more fantasy, which I know I haven't been buying many because, well, first off, before I moved here, less than a month ago, all my books in this room, they couldn't fit in the bookshelf I had for them downstairs. They were like starting to be on the next one. So I stopped buying them, and I'm just not happy with it, essentially. This is the worst genre for me in terms of needing to declutter. There you go. I summarized my thoughts here. Also, I own a lot of series, which is super common with fantasy, but because I buy secondhand, sometimes I'll see a whole trilogy and I was looking for it. And instead of just buying the first one, I buy the whole trilogy. So I just feel like a hoarder, and I have been terrible at finishing series. That was also another challenge for me this year that I'm doing again next year, even though it's painful, because I need to just go through them at this point. It needs to happen. So yeah, for me, this is the genre that is the most, not stressful, but like a lot of changes need to happen. Second genre next to me is sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I feel like it's underrated on Booktube. That's why I've done so many beginner's guide, which actually, if I forget, remind me, I'll put some in the description box. I love finding some that are really beginner friendly. A lot of you have actually started reading sci-fi because of me, which that is literally my favorite thing to read in the comment section. So I own 216. So I own one more book than fantasy. I feel like I'm cheating because some of them I have twice. And I'm not someone that collects different edition. It's just because I buy secondhand. So sometimes I'll find like the combined edition and it's ugly, like Octavia E. Butler. And I'm now trying to find a prettier edition. So I slowly am collecting them until I find a whole trilogy so I can get rid of the other one. So like some of them, I have maybe like 3 or 4 books like that on my shelf that make that number slightly higher than fantasy. Probably shouldn't, but whatever. So out of the 216, I have read 75, which is the highest number of owned and read books in any genre that I own. And that makes it 34.7%, so 35%. We're happy with that number. By the way, I tried to do little like shelves with my favorites. Again, you can't really tell right now because I had to turn them around because I want to note all the unread books eventually. But this shelf and the other one are like basically all turned around because of that. But you'll see in the before after in the clips all the ones that I love. I try to make little favorites, and yeah, a lot of Octavia E. Butler, a lot of Becky Chambers, some Matt Haig thrown in there. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite genres. I haven't read, once again, as many this year, although I have read, again, 5 Octavia E. Butler. But it's definitely something that I'm going to keep hoarding. I don't really need to declutter that much that genre. I only have like half a shelf that has some of the YA ones that I've owned for too long, so it's not too bad. But I have quite a few that are like 1,000 pages that terrify me, and that's another thing that we're hoping I'm gonna be able to test and try in my Read It or Unhaul It challenge of next year, because I'm never gonna pick them up without being forced. Next bookshelf slash genre, we have mystery, thriller, horror. I combine them together because there's not much of a difference in my head. So out of these 3 genres, I own 115, which is a bit higher than I thought, but it's essentially because of Stephen King. I find very easily his books at secondhand bookstores. I'm sure if you've looked, you know, all of his books are there. So never buy a brand new one unless it's a new release. And out of the 115, I have read 44, which makes it 38%, which is my highest. That was a shock for me because I feel like I don't own a ton of them, which is probably why actually the percentage that I have read and bought, the ones that I liked, makes it so high. But these are genres I've been struggling with. Because I love them more in theory, I feel like, than in actuality. It's probably because I'm taking my recommendations from the Goodreads Choice Award, which I now know, I need to actually understand now, they don't work for me. Like, vast majority of them don't work for me. They're more like domestic thrillers, and I don't care about the husband cheating and the alcoholic. I don't care. So next year I'm planning on focusing on trying some that are like thriller with sci-fi elements. I feel like these work better for me. But at the same time, I also get rid of them pretty regularly. Like I got rid of a lot of the Stephen King books that I have read because I don't love them. His endings suck. So I don't know if I even want to continue reading his books, to be honest. He's very popular, but he doesn't really work for me. My favorite book by him is The Long Walk, which is like the least Stephen King book. Anyway, we're moving on. Next genre we have is nonfiction, which was my prediction personally in terms of the worst read versus unread genre. And I was right. Out of 87 books, I probably have bought a third of these this year. I have only read 20, which makes it 23%. In my defense, I tend to read those from the library just because I like them as audiobooks, and my library has new ones, like new releases, which I'm just more interested in, and they're really hard to find secondhand. They just are, and they're often more expensive. They're $2 at my library sales. So like, you know, if I just feel like splurging or like, no, but really, I just can't find the newer ones or any that I'm really that interested in. So these 87 were hard to find, essentially. Next we have classics, which I own 74, and I have read 27 of them, which makes it the second best genre for me. It's 36%. It is heavily influenced by the fact that I own some of the ones I had to read in school. So I'm just being honest here. It's a genre though that I want to read more of. We started a classic section on the Patreon book club. So every 2 months we're reading a big classic, which any day now I should post my introduction to next year's challenge. I'll talk about the 6 big books that we've chosen, and then I'll probably mention a couple of the ones that I want to read throughout the year, shorter ones. So yeah, I'm not surprised, but I'm aware that the ones I own from high school and university are increasing my percentage by a lot. And then last but definitely not least, we have everything else. I'm sorry I counted them together because I'm lazy and I didn't want to separate them. I just moved everything in here and like there are too many and they're not my favorite genres. So we have historical fiction, contemporary, romance. I mean, often they're like so similar too. So I own 89 and I have read 27, and quite frankly, there's at least 7 or 8 that I've read this year. Because again, these were not my main genres, but I've been trying to get in my comfort zone, and I've read actually a good amount this year. So that makes it 30%. I'm sure if I were to count separately, it would be different, but it is what it is. I'm just starting to care about them. These are my stats. How do you feel about it? Anything that surprised you? What about you? What's your worst genre? Do you own a lot of books? Do you own a lot of read books? Do you get rid of books? I feel like that makes a big difference. A lot of people just keep their books. And if I were to do that, like I said, I've read like 667 books. Sure, there's probably like 200 that are from my library. But that means I would own like another 200 books that I have read, which would increase my... Actually, I would own a library. Damn it. But if I were, then that would mean I would have like 40-50% read versus unread. So I'm still okay. Honestly, 33% is just fine by me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, definitely subscribe because I will be posting the video about my unread TBR, reading my physical TBR, read it or unhaul it challenge for next year really soon. And yeah, I'll see you in a coming video very soon. Bye.